The motivators for what I have and my vision are very different from private equity.
Welcome to the Measure Success podcast, where we feature top leaders on how they measure success in their business and life. Now, let's learn from their experiences.
Carl J Cox here, a host of the Measure Success podcast, where I talk with top leaders about effective strategies that inspire success. This episode is brought to you by 40 Strategy. 40 Strategy is built to make strategy work for small to medium-sized businesses and organizations by not only helping them design a world-class strategic plan, but more importantly, help keeping them accountable to actually get it done. To learn more, go to 40strategy.com. Also excited, our book, Lost at CEO. You can pick that up at Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, and Audible as well. Thank you to Todd Armstrong for recommending Rick Jordan today. We always like to do a shout out when that's appropriate. And with that, really excited to talk about our guest, Rick Jordan. Rick is the founder and CEO of Reach Out IT, the first ever public MSP or managed IT services provider to go from startup to public company without the help of outside money. We'll dabble about that a little bit more today. He has gone through trial and error. He's the true definition of self-made in terms of going from a rag to riches story. Rick, welcome to the Measure Success podcast.
What's shaking, Carl? Thanks for the kind words, my man.
Well, first of all, I want to say, and I mean this sincerely, you are everywhere. So you are one of like 5 people of our 180 episodes that has not done a prep call. And you're like, and I think the message was back to us like, I think I'm out there. I think we're already known. And I mean that in a sincere, good way. And you are literally out there. You are on major networks throughout the country. I've seen the TV. I've seen your YouTube. You have a combination of your own personal brand, Rick Jordan TV, and then you also have your actual business of managed IT services. So let's start with the basic part right here, the core business of what you do. What is the core business and how are you helping out your clients?
Yeah, Reach Out Technology is a cybersecurity focused managed services provider, managed IT services provider. And that shifted from, being IT first to cybersecurity first, probably about 6 or 7 years ago, just because of the shifts in the marketplace. Done a lot to make sure that our competencies leveled up and our skill sets and our tool sets leveled up with that, which is really that blue ocean that I have to take access to and advantage of within this space today, because a lot don't go through that. You said trial and error, right? To actually determine what it means to deliver those cybersecurity services for small and mid-sized businesses, let alone the mission that I'm on, which is creating a nationwide brand for cybersecurity and IT services for small and mid-sized businesses, because it doesn't exist until Reach Out. I get the questions like, why public? And it's like, that's one of the reasons, because that nationwide brand does not exist.
Yeah, and you are doing something, once again, this is not an understatement. And I did something I typically don't do. I actually grind into the SEC details, and I'm like, Rick, why in the heck are you deciding to go public? Because the typical route is to go private equity, right, these days, or perhaps even venture capital if you're earlier stage. But you had a business and you decided, hey, I want to go public and start it very differently, start from a whole different perspective. You did this reverse merger on it. Briefly, what has been the big benefit of going down that path versus the traditional PE roll-up approach?
Yeah, the first is I control the vision, because the motivators for what I have and my vision are very different from private equity. Private equity will roll things up and their idea is to spin it off, which of course makes sense. It's an investment, and then make money on that portfolio. There's zero care really about the actual service being delivered. It's all financial. That's it, and most of those acquired companies are left to operate independently. They retain their brand, and the whole purpose is like you're looking to exit, and this is a step along that path, is to exit using private equity. Different motivators. Now, with Reach Out and going public, we have the access to public securities, real tangible stock that's trading. And that's a big differentiator for us, because a lot of our deals are structured to where you can get that second bite of the apple. There's always stock included in our deals. So building a nationwide brand, whether a seller stays on, for 5 years or 5 months, they still get to take advantage of that in building this amazing organization, that actually cares about everything. So where private equity doesn't rebrand, we rebrand. within the first 90 days. Where private equity doesn't really care about the customers and everything, we go in and standardize the operations through economies of scale to make everything look the same across the board. I hate to be as crude as saying it's like the McDonald's of IT and cybersecurity, but it's kind of the same principle, because no matter if you get our services in New York or Chicago or Texas or Arizona, you are going to receive the same tasting hamburger in every single place.
Yeah, and we all know this, right? Just I was just talking with the client the other day. I mean, IT security almost seems like it's impossible. It almost seems like an oxymoron, honestly. IT security. When you have the NSA getting hacked, like, okay, what's next?
Like every day,
Yeah,
right? Yeah. Yeah.
exactly. So I'm curious from your perspective, because I mean, I tell people I don't think there is a thing as safe, right? So how do you help people overcome that concern and give them this is the best approach to make you safer?
Yeah, it's a great question, and that's one of the reason why I'm taking the approach with the public route, because with economies of scale, we have greater access to financially a lot of the tool sets that are needed to provide that service. So where you might be, well, I laugh a little bit, where you might be 34% safe with like a one-man shop or a smaller managed service provider, kind of like the condom of cybersecurity. Sometimes it'll work, sometimes it won't. We get closer to the higher, in the 90s is where we're at, using the tool sets and the processes and the people that we do. And it's nothing to say that that those smaller shops are bad people, or they're trying, but the financial accessibility to the actual tools is hard for smaller companies because they're expensive, man. They're really, really expensive. So when it comes to protecting that, we're selling an outcome, versus a small shop will sell a cost plus model. They'll sell what used to be antivirus protection is now AI based EDR. It's called endpoint detection and response. They'll sell that as a license and then mark it up. That's it. Whereas it's like we're including that in our bundle because we're not selling light items in our stack, which is about 36 different things. Whereas they're using like 5 because that's all that they can afford in the stage they're in business. Where we're selling those 34, it still doesn't matter because we're not saying, here's our 34 things. We're saying, here's the outcome that's going to be provided. And when something happens, because we don't say if, right? We say when something happens, we have the right protective measures and proactive measures in place so that the recovery is a lot easier and faster. And we always say it's like the worst we've ever had recovering from ransomware with a client has been 2 hours to complete restoration without paying a ransom. That's the worst. When you see municipalities like Dallas a few months back, being offline for 4 weeks, and that's the difference, is providing that outcome versus just saying, hey, we'll sell you this. And then a month later, hey, we'll sell you that. We'll sell you this again. Because those items within that bucket might change over time because cybersecurity is always changing. We're selling the outcome, not the specific components.
All right, Rick, I want to reiterate something. So you're saying you were able to fix a ransomware attack in just 2 hours?
Yeah, a lot. Some have been faster too. Our quickest was about 5 seconds.
Wow. That's incredible, right? Because that is one of the biggest fears, right, actually of any size company, right? Is having that you to open your screen and you are locked out, right? You don't have a chance. The other big thing that this is not new, right? I used to, Rick, I didn't share with you a long time ago. I used to be a part of a company, actually also a publicly traded company, where we actually had 5 of the top 10 banks in the United States, and we would host their servers on internet banking, right? That was like the new thing. This is when it was new, right?
Yeah.
This is the 2000s, right?
Yep.
And what was crazy about that is the amount of hacking and recognizing that the amount of money that banks have to shell out to pay out fraud, right? It's irregular. And then you have what's more and more common today. This is one not long ago. I had a text message that came to me because a client I was working with they had recognized he had gone out of town, sent me like it was from him saying, hey, Carl, can you please wire me this amount?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So there's 2 pieces of this. There's technology, but then there's also education. Like I was fortunately savvy enough to recognize that even though it looked real, it wasn't real. What do you do on the education side to help mitigate the risk, right? That somebody makes that bad decision of pressing a button or making the mistake of sending a wire to the wrong people?
Yeah, I always say that there's a Bob in every company, right? And that Bob, no offense to any Bobs listening, that Bob will always click on anything. So every company has a Bob. And when Bob looks at these things, it looks legitimate, and looks like a Chick-fil-A email, which was a legitimate phishing thing that we saw before. Said, "Hey, have our new summertime strawberry lemonade." But then you click on the link and it takes you to a login page to get the coupon that's login with Google or login with Microsoft, but it's a fictitious page that now you give up your password and it's captured on that fake page to try to just get a stupid coupon for strawberry lemonade. And what we do to help prevent that, because there's a very real and large human aspect to cybersecurity. And when it comes to mitigating risk, I mean, from a financial perspective, a CFO's main job is mitigating risk, period. Phishing training is one of the biggest components to what we do. And the reason behind that is because general liability policies, most of them now, and 100% of cyber liability policies for small and mid-sized businesses require cybersecurity awareness training. So we kind of have the backing of that strength behind us, that you just need to do this. But that's in like the most basic thing that we do, because that is where a lot of this stuff happens. Over 90% of ransomware attacks start with a phishing email. So that's why awareness and training is one of the biggest things that we need. We can put all the tech in place on the proactive side that we want and the protective side that we want. But if Bob still clicks on something and he's got a password that gives him access to the kingdom, there's no way to circumvent that, which then it becomes a recovery issue.
Yeah, and Rick, I you know this, but Bob is not necessarily your low employee. I've seen this as high as the CFO and
Yeah,
CEO
right on.
level.
Yep.
I there was a
They
company I
like their
know.
lemonade.
Yeah. I mean, a PE company wired $200,000, gone. I mean, gone. So, are you saying it's possible that an insurance company will not, basically, if they can prove that you didn't do the training that you said you were going to do, they might not actually give you the reimbursement back for that insurance that you have?
Correct. I mean, same with the CFO, right? The insurance company as a whole is mitigating risk on both sides of the equation, both for the one who's underwritten the business and for them as the underwriters. So the first step, like anything else, is trying to find the faults where you might not have complied with the policy. And I mean, even think of like a roofing issue at a home for homeowners. Like there's always those questions, and those questions are not to your benefit to find out what happened. Those questions are to find out where you went wrong, where you didn't have a specific area of coverage so that they don't have to pay. It's just the nature of the industry. Everybody still needs insurance, but it's just the nature of the industry. Correct. First, it's being underwritten is the issue, because you don't have those components that are required to be underwritten. Then, if you do, it's maintaining that. And a lot of insurance companies will require you to do internal scans now and then submit those results to them to make sure you're still compliant.
That's awesome. That's great insights, what you just said there. And once again, I appreciate diving into the tech and the details and what's really happening and why, once again, small to medium-sized business owners, they need to be aware of this, right? And this is a lot of the people that you're working for. So how do you measure success in your business today, Rick?
It's KPIs, and the general company itself. I mean, we look at profitability, of course, but from a success perspective, it's really, are our customers being served? Are we having our own KPIs being met? Because it's a focus on customer level pain, and those are all of our KPIs, and we're completely transparent with those too. I freaked out my team about 5 years ago when I said we're showing our customers everything. Even before I decided to go public, it was like there's that level of transparency, and it's like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, if we show them these, because we're not tracking what most MSPs do, to where it's like tickets open versus tickets closed, and it's like, great, we have no backlog. I've seen some gauges like KPIs are like kill ratios, and I'm like, what good does that do a customer? For real. But that's when we shift, and it's like our KPIs are based on customer level pain. How many issues have they had this month in a ratio compared to how many people they have? We call it a reactive ratio. And if it's in a certain period, like 3 to 1, we know we're doing well. And by the way, that is tied back to financials and budgeting for reactive staff and the tool sets that goes on. But then it's like, when I look at the MSP industry as a whole, it's like, well, most are 1 to 1. Why does every person in a company, in a customer's company, have to have a problem every single month? They would hate you, which that's the typical case. So if we can gauge the level of their pain and literally show them the level of their pain, then we're on the same side of the table. So we measure success by being able to move those numbers together with our customers.
So, Rick, on the personal side, you've done an amazing job of increasing your personal brand. Before the show, you said about 2018, that's when you really started to get into this. Explain to somebody, and once again, I'm assuming you didn't really have much before then. And now here you are. And once again, you are everywhere. You're on major networks. You're once again, you do a search on Rick Jordan. I try to do it right now. Do a Rick Jordan search. You're gonna see you everywhere on major things on TV networks. Real quickly here, how did you do it, and why did you do it?
It's funny how that transpires because I know that attention draws money. I've always known that. Even with growing up in church and everything like that, it's like if there's something positive that happens and you throw it out to people within a church, because I am an ordained pastor too, and you throw it out to people in a church and you give hope and almost like a campaign, right? They're more excited and then they donate more. It's the same scenario with the general public. So if you're looking to build a business, I always say you have to be findable and you have to put out there exactly who that you are. So when you can make shifts and impact in a massive way like that, which you start with something small. I started my first entrepreneurial event, though. I spoke at NASDAQ and I was on the NASDAQ Jumbotron. It was through a media coach and it was a pay to play kind of thing, but you also got taught, and then that's why somebody approached me years later, found that photo on the internet of me in the NASDAQ boardroom when I didn't even know what I was doing there at the first event. Like that guy's got the look. And but it really was the environment that I surrounded myself with. So I was just going through a conference I was attending, and I saw this guy with a booth, and I looked, I'm like, that's interesting. And so I talked to him, and I'm like, it's an IT conference. I'm like, how many people here have signed up for this? And he's like, this is a hard crowd, man. I'm like, I bet. And for that reason, I know I need to do it because not many others are. So he also taught me how to get on TV. I did a lot of local TV, and then it moved to later on to being nationwide TV, like Newsmax, Fox in DC, CBS. I actually talked with CBS and Bloomberg during the Elon Musk deal with Twitter and talking through the acquisition structure, and it's just because I labeled myself as the expert. Literally, it's like to other people, you are what you label yourself as. That's the part of branding that most don't catch. You are the expert because you call yourself the expert. Obviously you have to show up with the chops after that, but it's branding that gets you in the door. So there's nothing like in social media. Obviously my presence is huge, but still that was built up over the time over the last 6 years because of TV, man. Because there's nothing that does better for SEO, like you said, search my name, than backlinks from a nationwide news network. And that's like free SEO. I've never paid for SEO for any of my stuff because of the traffic that's generated. Like I went on Fox 5 DC last year and they called me out. It was like, man, it's like you got like double the ratings as almost everybody else. It was a cool 1.7 million people. You can't even get that on YouTube, dude. But like a 3 or 4 minute segment and 1.7 million people see you.
Wow. That's awesome. Rick, final piece here. One of my final questions I've asked, what is a book that perhaps maybe those days when you're like getting ready to launch and really start to go big really helped inspire you to go take that next step?
Yeah, I listen to a lot of audiobooks, and that's when I work out. That's how I consume my content. There's several that I can go back to, but one of the biggest ones I always reference is The Wisdom of Walt. And it's there's a series of 2, but the first one actually dives into the psyche of Walt Disney and how he built Disneyland, but then also transitioned into Disney World. And it gets into a lot of the finance part of it too, which is incredible, and how he had to win over the financiers and the strategies he went through that. It's a short book, man, but dude, it is powerful.
Wow. Rick, great advice. We don't have time to ask you my favorite question is how you measure success in your personal life. We might have to hit that on a future one. I know we talked about having some more opportunities to have you on again. Rick, it has been an absolute pleasure to have you on the Measure Success podcast today.
Thanks for having me on, Carl. Yeah, happy to come back, dude.
Thank you so much. And to everyone else who's listening, I hope you enjoyed this session. Rick is crushing it. He's doing an incredible job. Not only is he talking it, but he's walking it. And that's what's an amazing job. So I encourage you, go out, listen, rate this show. And that's why we continue to get great people like Rick Jordan to be on the Measure Success podcast. With that, wishing you the very best at measuring your success. Have a great day.
Thanks for listening to the Measure Success podcast. We'll see you again next time to learn from the best. Remember to subscribe now to get future episodes.